Good afternoon. My name is Brian Belikoff. Today we are going to talk about AI and how to leverage it in the industry, in particular safety. So AI is all over the place. We're using it on a daily basis. There's definitely pros and cons. So, overview of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about some of the fundamentals like terms, what tools are out there, some risk management applications, um, and then we're going to end it with more of a safety training, doing simulations, just an introduction to things like agents. So AI, as we're hearing it in the news all the time, I think ChatGPT, about 4 years ago now, it was a big one, but now there's all kinds of AI programs. As you can see, this research study in 2022 said that AI is up for financial investment in the private sector 18 times more. So since 2013, so a great increase. And more importantly, almost most companies are using AI in some fashion. So um, I- they approximate between 50 and 60% of all industries. So big one, as well as the U.S. government is involved in this. So 2.5 times increase for the last 10 years. So quite a bit. And then if we think about, one of the major concerns is, AI is coming for our jobs, right? That think about the Terminator approach. I kind of like this figure here showing, these are all theoretical, so we really don't know. But, in the next 10 years from now, in 2035, um, what industries will be mostly impacted with AI. So the red is what's being observed right now. So again, the administration transcribing definitely being impacted. But as you can see, a lot of the sectors, over 50%, will definitely be impacted. But some industries, not at all. Look at, you look at construction, repairs, agriculture, not having that much influence. So it's important to know that AI doesn't understand our language. It uses math. So if we use the statement, Jack and Jill ran up the, and you gotta fill in the blank. So we know from our experience that ran up the hill, right? But AI uses each word and projects a probability on each of those words together. So it still knows, just like us, so from our experience, 95, 4% of it's going to be healed, but, it could just as easily be mountain, right? Or stairs. So it looks at the probability and it does this by tokens. So it breaks it into small parts and analyzes each of those to determine what's more likely. So as far as terms, prompts is probably the most commonly used. So this is our instruction to input into the model. Token, we just went over small chunks of text it's using to analyze. Hallucinations, this is where, the AI outputs are actually inaccurate and fabricated. So we think humans could be lazy, but, AI is based on human input, and its output could be just as error prone um, than we are. So lots of tools out there, the big ones that, I think one of the first ones, ChatGPT. So I remember first using it about 4 years ago. I was doing a conference in Chicago. So I asked it for a trip, give me hotels, the best route, all that. I thought it was going to do an excellent job. Actually, every single part of it was wrong. The prices were wrong, the locations were wrong, which is amazing. But if you think about it, it's using data that it has. And at that time, it was limited on what data it has. It has vastly improved in the last 4 years. Actually, it came pretty close to accurate now, but just goes to show garbage in, garbage out, right? But for ChatGPT, definitely still use it. It was one of my first ones I used. One thing I think has its strengths, it can incorporate, atmospheres. So like Excel. So even though I use Gemini more now, you can't use it. Excel with Gemini. It doesn't like it. So as an all-arounder, ChatGPT is really good, including image generators, voice. Claude is definitely one of the big ones. I think its strength is by far with business. Having had a small business of myself, I understand the strengths. So you can ask it for, a strength, weakness, do a business plan, and it's going to write phenomenally. And it's good at critiquing, telling you what you're not doing good at. If I had my mom, everything would be great, right? Definitely a limitation, doesn't have an image generator. Again, Google, we'll go through some of the strengths, but definitely the speed, as well as if you're using Google quite a bit for like Gmail and their calendar and stuff like that, Gemini is probably a good one. Perplexity comes up a lot for research, and I think it's because it can incorporate a lot of image sort or bring in other AIs to compare it to, such as Claude or ChatGPT. So no tool is the best. I would say each one of them has their own strengths, and I would say just get started with it. So again, lots of tools, we went over 4. There's a couple more on here, like Grok. That's, Elon Musk is really good at looking at Twitter searches and seeking it out. We got the Meta one here, Midjourney for like images, and then a couple of the sound ones. If you go on your phone though, by far the most recent stat of 2026, that Claude is elevating to the number 1 and ChatGPT is 2 for the phone. So it kind of depends on your application. So we went through some of the strengths. Again, limitations. Claude doesn't do voice, doesn't do images, but really good at the other thing you can add is to be able to code. So I do a little bit of coding, but if it can do it for you. So I think that's the other advantage of Claude. Whereas this ChatGPT, it's doing the text, imaging, voice. I do agree with it. It can generate generic responses without more guidance. We'll kind of go over how to help that situation. And so I would say for the top things, Gemini is best at the benchmarks. If you compare it to all the ones, it's doing it faster. Claude, one thing that stands out is the coding, can summarize long documents, and the ecosystem for ChatGPT. So Midjourney, I was just recently introduced to it, and I think one of its strengths is not only is an image generator, it really creates a very detailed, like poster-like. Each of those, except Claude, has a video and image. So this is from ChatGPT. This DALL-E is that image generator. Sora is that video for ChatGPT that is I'm using for AI tools. I'm an academic doing research, so 2 tools that I think are very important is that Perplexity. It is open to the web that you can download, documents into as well as your research. But one that I have been really liking is that Notebook LM. So it could do really deep dives, but it's a closed system. So you could open it up to the web or just use your own documents to analyze. And I think this is one of its strengths, so especially as a researcher. So prompts, all these AI programs use prompts and so I think it's kind of important to understand how we can improve our prompts because, Google search engine has actually made us not as good at this. So think of being trying to be precise. So I think of when you're describing it, 2 to 3 sentences at least. We're used to like less than a sentence to try to get it down to be, try to get those keywords, right? With a Google search. Not good with a AI prompt. The more you can put in it, the more precise it's going to be and give you overall. And it's going to think a little bit slower is exactly what you want. So you want to put who's the actors, who's being in place. So my example here is, let's say if I was doing, trying to ask it to improve my CV. And so I say, you are the world's most sought after industrial safety professional that has reviewed thousands of CVs. So it's all right. You're on the top of your game with this. And then what am I looking for? So you input that job description from the university as associate professor. They give a page, so you could just copy that input in there. And then third, what is your aim? So I say, review it, give me at least 5 ideas to clarify and give me a measurable impact. And then lastly, verify your output. So, this is a good sentence after we put the whole job description. It's a whole page, but looking at that, so it's going to slow it down and be a lot more particular on its answer it's going to give you. So with AI, there's definitely pros and cons, right? So con I think of is that lacks that human part of it. It doesn't even understand our language. It's using math to put into the language. And so I really think about valedictorian speech that I saw recently gave no indications of a story. They, remarked of how, the university grew them. But traditionally, we want to hear a story. Oh, this professor, Mr. Burns, sat with me at the end of the class and went all through it. It's just a huge story to get connected, to have that emotional impact. They just don't want to say, oh, I had a growing experience. That's boring, doesn't expand it, right? And AI usually lacks that. So that's something that, you can add. So that narrative on the bottom. So this ocean checklist, originality, you can ask it for examples. After it gives you an answer to continually develop it, ask it for its evidence. This is one, especially as an academic. We say it hallucinates, so it's making up citations, but you could ask it, where did you get those citations, and find them and show me proof. And then it will go through it, and sometimes 50% of the time it can't find the citations. It's like, oh, this does not exist. So I think it's very important to do follow-up. Assertions that, take a stance. So, when we're writing, usually in science, we don't try to take a stance, but more writing than not, we actually are taking a stance. So this is another way to try to improve that. So again, on this side, you could use cross-modeling. So not only asking ChatGPT, you could ask Claude the same question or have Claude evaluate ChatGPT's responses. So that's a good verification shield. Again, with those sources, we can add it. We can also ask it with confidence. Can you rate your evidence that you gave me? So challenging the AI is important because it will let you know how correct it thinks it is. And then what you think it would be confident, it sounds confident until you ask it, are you confident? And then it will be honest with you. So in the workplace, we're looking at, physical hazards such as the software has a physical substance. The platform is the algorithm embedded into the robots or vehicles, and the altered hazard profile. So we can look at, can it alter the physical, chemical, or biological risk? And then there's also the psychosocial, right? Does it create stress? Does it create fear? All very important topics. So with AI, there's a deep mind approach. You could go safety versus autonomy system that's doesn't have that. So for a focus, you could look at the long-term risks of a highly capable AI. The problem would be is that harmful solutions can be classify the objectives, the timeline, the original. Whereas if we look at the engineering approach, the focus could be reliability of the autonomous system, core verification. So we got data, then we got modeling and learning and verification and deployment, right? So the timeline is current or near. So effective occupational safety requires blending of long-term frameworks with the near-term cycles. So technology can have some cons of taking out for some jobs that we can be fearful, but definitely has its pros. So we look at, when they were building skyscrapers at tremendous heights. Look at these guys over here, no harness, no protection whatsoever. And so now we have cranes that we can, help protect people, as well as drones nowadays that, hopefully prevent people from even going at height distances just to do an inspection, right? So that definitely decreases the hazard. So AI is being used all the time. Some more recent examples, such with safety, is like auto coding. So we're using AI to code workers' comp claims. Being in the healthcare field, also, the claim industry is very comprehensive and complex. So if we can have machines, it definitely makes it more efficient and reduces the time. So when I was in practice, we're doing a preventative visit for $50, which sounds like a lot, but if you're paying the coding person $20 an hour to code, and it takes them that full hour, and then that doesn't include the follow-up with insurance and stuff like that. So that's at least half the payment going just to code it. So if we could use machines, it definitely is more cost prohibitive or pro. Other example is using vision and speech. So, with my phone, and I go, "Hey Google," all the time, right? My phone is probably gonna wake up now. Other things is like with vision, to just open up the phone using that camera feature to open it up, recognizing my face, right? And so that's some familiar examples. But in safety, we could use the same kind of concept, using the camera to say, "Hey, are they wearing their PPE?" So like this hard hat, for example. That is a safety application of computer vision. Oh, see, there's my phone going on. Are they wearing a vest? Are they wearing gloves? And so it's checking it off. Oh, it recognizes there's something wrong here. Maybe the facial hair that it doesn't like. So definitely some pros that we can use this for. Machine learning, familiar things that we've been using for a long time now is like forecasting for weather. So, we have the Doppler, but when you look at the Doppler on my phone, it will go through a 24 hours. So it's using a predictive model, using machine learning to see, giving me a percent chance. Oh, it's a 30% chance of raining later at 1 p.m. type of thing. So these are ways we're using it, have been using it for a while. One that you know, uh, fraud alerts. So it might say, "Bing, oh, you have a charge in Mexico," and it recognizes you're in Montana. So that is a machine learning to help. So lots of ways, but for safety, predictive model for ergonomics, as you know, I'm very into ergonomics. So this is a program. Um, it's highlighting each joint, but it's predicting the angle with each without measuring it, just based on the 3D image of it. Other ways we could do it is predictive models of a safety network. I just saw one using a ventilation in a mine, and so they were alternating the CFMs based on the weather outside. So some cool applications. And then, we're definitely seeing things like Tesla and those type of things so using autonomous vehicles. So they're using cameras, right, to project the path best, things that we need to develop as we have these robots or little vehicles that are autonomous, the path they're going to take and the program that it takes, right, to make sure it's safe. So AI in the workplace, definitely one of the advantages is trying to automate repetitive tasks. Remember, humans not so good at repetitive tasks, right? It's more repetitive you get, longer hours, more likelihood there's going to be error. We could use it to optimize schedules, forecast supply and demand. So a lot of warehouses have a hard time with keeping track of the supply and demand. When they have a football field of different supplies, it's hard to keep track of them. So if we can use these AI to predict based on the demand, because demand probably changes throughout the year based on the different circumstances. We have holidays and all kinds of things that can influence it, weather at the long last, right? We could do predictive maintenance. I just saw one that did a training of trying to tear down an engine that they've never had experience with. So that could be application. So a lot of different things. Healthcare, I think that's one I've seen. I've had experience with radiology. Radiology's pretty tough. There's a lot of um, layers to radiology, so it's easy to miss things. So if we can use machines to help improve those error rates, definitely is possibilities to help with the healthcare. So lots of different areas. So I mean, how you feel about AI really depends on a lot of things. Workplace design, I think, is number one, right? So sometimes if it's replacing a repetitive task that no one wants to do, then great. But if it's replacing a key feature that people identify as part of their job, people might not have a great view of how the AI is coming in. And so a lot of times what I hear about AI is people are fearful that they don't have any choice in it. And I think that's a wrong approach because we are developing AI. We say, and we could put the guardrails around it. Different things that has come up throughout the years, throughout research, and AI is no different. Is looking at bias and equity, just because we are developing the AI, and so if we do research just on one population, that's creating a control bias or population bias. But there's lots of different biases that we introduce to the AI because we are programming it, and so that's where we need to be part have a really diverse stakeholders in training, right? So we transmute the hazard into the ultimate safety of the machine, using the machine to protect the human. And so doing simulations is one great application. They call it agent in AI. So think of a prediction model something that happens, and the AI can simulate like a worker, or it could simulate a manager, but you have to put a lot of inputs in. So with the simulation, um, different parameters to do, real life practice. So first you want to set the parameters, set what the hazard is, generate the scenario, like where the equipment might fail. Then what's the decision of that worker or student, how they will analyze that choice. And then 4 is escalating um, the situation. Maybe the um, coworker is very verbal and combative, and how are they going to change that circumstance? And then lastly, debrief on the reflection of questions and stress connected to compliance and how we can learn from that situation. So those are all the parts on developing this agent, creating a real life scenario that a student or worker can practice with. So with Safety Pacific AI simulation showcases some highlights. Could be an invisible hazard. For example, a technician responds to a worker who's lightheaded, and so that could be a gas leak from like methane, for example. For a mine simulation, a roof collapses. What is the inspectors or family members to test the communication under pressure type of thing? We can have more of a management question where the supervisor meets with an employee that's been there for a long time regarding the procedures of a respirator they might not be using accurately, so defending your case. On that, you could do environmental health, more of an ethics type of question. So you have a chemical discharge, but it might impact production. What are the different roles of like the plant manager versus of the community members? All ways to train. So it's important to address the gaps in AI, such as being professional and looking at misconduct. So again, some pitfalls. So relying AI for math. So a disadvantage could be a worker or students might not be able to use a calculator. So that could be a pitfall. Generating if the AI generates manuals, they might not understand all the variables that went into that if we're using the AI, right? So it's critical that we're looking at all of these impacts that AI can have and how to counter them, right? So again, agents, this is the scenario that I created based on, we said, develop an underground mine with a ventilation job. Your role as the lead actor is the safety officer. The task is a 10-minute hazard identification. The behavior is act as a veteran wearing a respirator and showing moderate skepticism towards the new regulation. And so that would be developing an agent. That would be a little bit more, a simple approach would be like just a simple question answer. And so this definitely has a little bit more, I would say, the next level. So as practicing, again, I would start small. Think of maybe practice hiring questions. So that would be a simple approach. The next level is kind of what we introduced, but the third level would be kind of the full play, looking at the debrief, how you're actually learning and reflecting on that simulation. Lastly, AI with all this management, I think it's important to practice that plan, do, check, and act. So plan for this AI, for example, just planning those activities. If you want to get all the workers to wear PPE 100% of the time could be the plan, the goal. So what we're doing is we're going to implement training to show the workers how the AIs want to, um, regulate on our compliance towards this and check. So a safety person goes out on the floor, they're checking to make sure they're wearing their PPE, also that AI is documenting it correctly, right? And then lastly, ACT, developing an annual plan. Maybe that hearing protection's not quite doing it for you, so you want to upgrade. What you're doing may be a double protection, and how that AI might recognizing that double protection. So I think it's important to add this. Lastly, these are more of a personal approach. AI, I think, has huge benefits to upgrade the brain, whether you're using all these tools or just one of them. I think it's important, though, to take a personal approach too, as well as our work approach. So even what we're doing on the social media, I know on my phone, on my news reels, uh, I'm not really pro following things because I don't want, them having all my information. But this is a way to help focus on making sure it's, increasing the input that's coming in that you want. So by following different organizations like Human Factors, you can see news that's relevant to you. You could also automate it to using like Slack and say, all right, give me the top 4 newsreels in my industry. That's one build tools for safety type of thing. So I think it's important to, garbage in is garbage out, but this is a way to increase your input and upgrade with what you're doing in your personal life as well as your work. So the future of occupational health is human-centered, no matter what, with AI or not AI. Treat the algorithms rigorously. I think even though there's huge advantages, um, I think it's important to understand the basics, because without that, we're not going to understand if it's truly accurate or not, right? So developing these shields is important to use these AI technologies to uplift what we're doing, but we need controls in place because this is a human profession. All right, with that, thank you.